Welcome to the Rooted Woman Project, where we gather together the modern and ancient wisdom being shared with the world by the women. Oh God, I already messed that up. Okay.
It's
Cut
okay. It's
that.
okay.
We're going to start that again.
Okay.
Welcome to the Rooted Women Project, where we gather together the modern and ancient wisdom being shared by the women who nourish the world. I could not be more excited to introduce you to Amy today. Amy is an online yoga teacher who takes the intimidation factor out of yoga, and she's committed to making it approachable, accessible, and fun for all. And she weaves in mindfulness and meditation into everything that she brings to support you on all of the levels. So, welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. You can find Amy at Ayama with Amy on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be talking about mindful movement, mindfulness, how to connect with our bodies as women through both compassion, mindfulness, and movement. So, first, I just want to give you a chance, Amy, to just kind of share what it is that you do, how you got to be a yoga instructor and a fitness expert, and share a little bit about who you are with our community.
Well, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share all of the things that are going on right now. So my journey to yoga was more of like a professional development piece in my life. It wasn't like I want to do this because I have cultivated a yoga practice and now I want to teach others.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started teaching and personal like group teaching group X classes, doing personal training. I went to school for kinesiology,
Oh,
which
wow.
is the study of movement, and I studied nutrition as well. So I have two bachelors. And after school, I went into corporate wellness. I loved teaching group X. Group X was just like the most fun because it's like a party kind of. Like I don't know, I
What
loved
is Group X? What I'm
group exercise classes.
Oh, okay, got
So
it.
sorry for
But no.
people who are not in the fitness industry, we usually just abbreviate for group X. And it was, I don't know, I just always felt like people were excited to be there. I kind of get lit up in front of groups and I just loved it. And so I taught on and off for like a decade. I was doing like some contract work and then I went into a management position
Oh, wow.
and I still just got really, really burned out.
Mm.
But anyway, that is a long sort of like path to answer your question. So I went in 2017. I was like, I'm going to do this. I moved to a new city and it was very, I always used to refer to it as a fitness wasteland, but it was very heavy on yoga. Like there was a yoga studio on every corner.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I'm just going to do this and like see if it can expand my career opportunities. And what I ended up getting was like the universe handing my ass to me in terms of like self-awareness and surrender and just
Oh,
basically
wow.
like this journey to self-love. I mean, it was something that I had never ever done before. I'd never sat and meditated before. I never knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more like, yeah, I'll do yoga here and there when I'm feeling tight, blah, blah, blah. But it was never like a true practice. And so I went through this year-long yoga teacher training. I had the best teachers. They're very well known in the yoga industry. And yeah, it just like sort of changed my perspective. And on top of that, when I finished my yoga teacher training, I had like it was my last session as a student.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found out I was pregnant with my son. And like I didn't tell anybody. I had just found out like the day before. And I was like so emotional on that last day.
Oh,
Because I was
wow.
like, what my life's about to change. Like it was just this big thing. Like I had just graduated from this year-long program that I had put my heart and soul into. And now I just found out that
Long
I was,
program. Yeah.
yeah, it was very long. 200 hours is a long time
Yeah.
to dedicate to something. But yeah, so it was like it ended on like a very emotional note. And I think that's probably why I hold yoga so special to my
Mm,
heart, is because it's something that I did regularly when I was pregnant with my son.
mm,
And so I had him in 2018. And I mean, as a mom, your perspective changes so much after
so
you
much.
have kids, and like my body changed. And so I
Mhm,
just got really burned out on fitness, on teaching, on working in the fitness industry. I just got super burned out. And so I just pivoted out altogether.
mhm.
And then the pandemic hit.
Mm,
So then the fitness industry in general was kind of like turned upside down because of the
right.
pandemic, and is still recovering from all those closures. And I just really wanted to stay connected to my community. And so when you and I met, I was working on coaching fitness
Mhm,
professionals and like how to get them set up in an online business. And as I think like the reason why I really struggled getting momentum with coaching is because I was like, I have never built an online business. Like, how
mhm.
can I teach people to do this if I've never done it?
Right.
Um, and so I constantly was getting asked to teach yoga again. And so I figured I may as well just follow that and
Mhm,
listen to what my people are telling me to do, because I do have this expertise and it is
mhm.
something that I love to do. And so earlier this year I started Ayama with Amy, and I've just kind of brought the community from the Fierce Collective over with me. And the Fierce Collective is still around. It's changing, which I can talk about later. But yeah, so I'm doing online teaching right now, which is great for me because I do stay at home with my son a couple days a week. And I feel like that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's exactly what I was like wanting to just get to know your journey and like what are you bringing? Like what are all the experiences? Because it feels like I'm curious from your perspective, having so much awareness with the body. Do you feel like what you learn in a more traditional setting around kinesiology, does it fit within the realm of what you learned in the yoga teacher training too? Because I always think the yoga teacher training kind of adds that layer of philosophy and kind of spirituality in there too.
Mhm.
So do you find that they play nicely together?
I do. I think because I had the knowledge of the anatomy and the physiology and how the muscles
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
I sort of had that like Western philosophy of exercise and physiology. And not to say that Eastern medicine or Eastern practices don't explain that,
Yeah.
excuse me, but what I think my yoga teacher training did for me was be able to pair the mind body connection
Uh-huh.
and also the mind body spirit connection, because like I said, like I'd never meditated before. And I had done yoga before plenty of times. I mean, at this point I've been practicing yoga for like 20 years, but to have somebody take you on this like deep journey into yourself
Yeah.
and give you journal prompts, give you mantras to repeat, and give you like, just the time and the space to be able to explore those parts of yourself is something I never had before, and something I never did. Because for me, it is very, very hard for me. I think I just did a post on Instagram about this today, but like it's very hard for me to sit still,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very hard for me to meditate. And I'm trying to sort of change my framework of my own personal meditation and what that looks like for me and how it should look for everyone else, because I don't think meditation is just like sitting cross-legged
Mm-hmm.
and being quiet. And
Right.
even yoga is sometimes it's very hard for me to do my own practice,
Oh, interesting.
because I'm very much like a high energy person. I need to break a sweat. And
Yeah.
there's so many people out there I hear that say like, I just don't break a sweat with yoga. And like, it's not enough of a workout for me. And I think, like what you were saying, how the East and West kind of pair well together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that having that background in exercise and in teaching people how to exercise their body, I now know how to teach people how to exercise all of those things, mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the yoga teacher training just kind of like brought it all full circle for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too, because it's like what you were saying about having your ass like handed to you, right? Like
Right.
there's this thing with yoga where they say like you meet yourself on the mat,
Hmm.
right? And it's like this just popped into my own world just the other day. I was talking to somebody, but it's like how you do the small things is how you do the big things, right? And I feel like when you're on the yoga mat, there's like even a progression about how you are in relationship with the poses,
Hmm.
right? Like, do you do like a flow where you're like moving really kind of smoothly through them, or do you like sit and hold the fire and the intensity of it? Like, but even as you know, like, even within all the little poses, you contract the muscles in certain ways, and it gives you just like a full body experience that you don't just get like just passively sitting in the pose. So, do you find that that's kind of another way of deepening the practice in that more impactful way that people kind of want to like break
Yeah.
the sweat or
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just because you're not breaking a sweat with your body, I mean, maybe you are. Some
Mhm.
people do, but I
Mhm.
mean, I think you're sort of like quote unquote breaking a sweat in the other ways. You're working out like those smaller muscles. And people say like we really manifest our emotions really manifest in a physiological way, especially when it comes to like stress and grief and sadness. And we all need some kind of an outlet, whether that's, for me, it's running. It's running. That's my outlet. For other people, maybe it is meditation.
Right.
Um, but I like when you say the small thing, the way you do the small things is the way you do the big things, because in yoga, I feel like everything that you do on the mat can translate into your life to what you do off the mat. So when
Right.
you're saying like you're passively holding these poses, maybe you're just passively going through these scenarios in your life and the circumstances in your life without actively doing things. And when I say I got my ass handed to me in my yoga teacher training is like I did really have to sit with a lot of those emotions, and I really did
Totally.
have to like I remember there was we had one session more about the philosophy of yoga, and one of the words was surrender. It was like
Mhm.
surrender yourself into this practice, and that was something that like just cut me to the core. I think I'm a reformed perfectionist, and I think as women we just have a way of like wanting everything in our lives to like look and be a certain way, and I also think that we're sort of conditioned to think that way.
Right.
But there was something about that word surrender that just helped, like it like was a light switch for me. It just helped me started to cultivate more awareness around what I say and what I do, and how can I
Mhm.
be more intentional with the way I live my life.
Yeah.
So I love that saying, how you do the small things is how you do the big things. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really great saying.
And I love that you bring in like the intentionality of it too, because it
Mhm.
feels like we do hold so much in our bodies. And when you start to move through these poses, it really is like your life kind of meets you on the mat, right? Because it's like what comes up? Like, do you want to like rush through it? Do you get frustrated because you're not getting the pose right? Like, or
Yeah.
then you get into like the hip openers and then you start to like feel things that maybe you weren't ready to feel. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like it really does kind of become this moving meditation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I just feel like when you're being, oh, excuse me, I just drank a LaCroix and it's like making you want to burp. I don't want to do that here on your
Let it
podcast.
loose, baby. Let it loose. It's okay.
Um, but yeah, I feel like when I'm really intentional with my body, and I call that mindful movement,
Mhm.
it makes me be more intentional with my thoughts, the way I talk to myself, the way I talk to my partner, the way I talk to my kid,
Yep.
um, and the way I treat myself. I think having that time to yourself to do whatever it is you need to do to pair your not pair them, but like bring your mind, body, and soul all together into something that like actually brings you joy.
Right.
Um, there's something to be said about that and how it enables you to live a little more intentionally.
Right. So if you were totally new to the practice of mindful movement and you weren't actively in a yoga practice, like are there ways just within your day-to-day life outside of a class that you could start to connect with your body in this way?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think it's people overcomplicate it, right? They think mindful movement, well, I have to go to a yoga studio for that, or I need to pay all this money for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly, it's just as simple as like getting outside for a walk and like being in the sunshine and being in nature and just being really intentional and consistent with that, whatever it may be. Like for some people, I mean, I know yoga is not for everybody. Believe me, I have heard so many people tell me like yoga is not for me. And I get that, but maybe it's like for me, it's a run. Like I get so much out of just taking like a 20-minute jog every day. And I notice how much different my mind and my body feels and how much more like joyful I feel after I complete a run. So for somebody who wants to start, I'd say like do the simplest thing
Mm-hmm.
and something that you like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, yes, you have to sit on your mat and come to my classes. You're going to love them. And like, I think you will. But like, if you go to enough yoga classes and you're like, okay, this practice is just not for me. Like, I'm not going to be the person that's going to say, well, just stick with it. You'll
Right.
eventually love it.
Right.
And I think that's where people get very intimidated by exercise in general is
Uh-huh.
I think they have to make it this like complicated long thing or it can be as simple as just putting on your shoes and going out for a walk around your neighborhood and just
Yeah.
breathing the fresh air and getting some sunshine. And if that is something you love to do it every day and
Mhm.
find a time and just be consistent with it. And I think once you start doing it, you'll start to see changes and like, you know, it's so there's a lot of studies out there and I can't quote any of them right now, but I know that exercise and mindfulness can actually retrain your brain and you can actually create new neural pathways that sort
Mhm.
of like, you know, help you think differently and help you see things from a different perspective. And so,
Right.
my only advice is to don't let it intimidate you.
Right.
It's very simple. And I think people just need to keep that in mind when they
Mhm.
get started. And it could just be as simple as like maybe just sitting on their mat,
Mhm.
and having, or just like getting into child's pose or laying in Shavasana and just
Right.
trying it on, seeing what it feels like. Maybe it's Zumba for all I know. Like maybe
I did do Zumba and it's kind of fun.
I mean, I used to love Zoom. I used to love Zumba. Like
Yeah.
whatever it is for you,
Yeah.
like, and I also think too, there is this huge intimidation factor when people walk into a gym and they just see the
Yeah.
people on the treadmill and they see the people doing the weights and they're like, I have never ever done any of this before and they don't know where to start. Like
Right.
start simple.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple and then find what you love and keep doing it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love that you bring in that you like obviously teach and do yoga and you also are a runner, right? Because I feel like when in the yoga world, at least like, so I took training years and years and years, like years ago, and I did it in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, there was such this like cult following around yoga,
Oh yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like if you did yoga, like that's all you did.
Hmm.
And it was funny because I remember even one of the yoga teachers that I trained with, I was like, how does he get like that, like muscles from yoga? And they're like, oh no, he does weightlifting too. And I was like, really? Like, I thought it was like all yoga or nothing, right? And so I think so it's also kind of easy for people to be like, well, I'm not a yoga person, or I'm not a runner, or I'm not a kickboxer, right? But it's like, maybe you're just a little bit of all those things. And maybe you do yoga a few times a month, and maybe you do all the other things a few times a month, like being able to just kind of
Yeah.
play with it.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to what you said about yoga, like literally everything in the exercise and fitness world could be considered a cult. Like I had I mean, I will consider like myself being a cult follower in a big chain gym that is known for hit classes. I don't want to like say their name and call them out, but like I was a cult follower for them. I was a cult follower for like a very boutique gym when I lived in Arizona. And I have also been like a cult follower for step classes. And I've had people follow me like who came to my classes religiously when I was teaching on a regular basis. And I do think there is a misconception of yoga being a cult just because of some people. There are definitely some bad apples out there in the fitness and yoga world. But like you say, I think people think that they have to fit in a box. And I
Mhm.
thought that way too for the longest time. I was like, I'm a runner and I strength train and like those are my things. And
Right.
then when I met my husband, he was like, well, I really want you to try mountain biking because I think you
Mm.
will really like it. And I fell in love with mountain biking. And so I was like, okay, I'll try this. And I'm not saying like go out and get a mountain bike because it's expensive and it's dangerous. Like, I do think that people think we have to fit in this box, but I think if you feel comfortable and you have an open mind and an open heart and you're willing to try all these things like running or walking or hiking or whatever it is, I think that yoga will only enhance those things. And
Right.
like try yoga and maybe you do become like a cult follower of somebody that you love, but I think it's important for people to realize like they don't have to be in one box when it comes to movement.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk really quickly, well, not really quickly, but I want to talk about, because I think this is really important for women to kind of like, I think what you bring is a portal into an opportunity to support women in connecting with their bodies in ways that may feel intimidating, because we've grown up in a society that really values the appearance of our bodies and our, how we present ourselves.
Right.
And it's so amazing to me when you look at just like the progression of obsession with women's bodies and how over the years it's changed, right? And now we are very much so in this particular expectation that our bodies are going to look a certain way.
Mhm.
And for many women, I mean myself included on some level, that like we derive a sense of value
Mm. Yeah.
from having that kind of feedback on our physical
Right.
appearance.
Right.
And so for some of us, like meeting ourselves on the mat and being more mindful with our bodies also requires us to become more compassionate with them
Mhm.
and to be willing to love them in their current state, no matter what that is.
Yeah.
Um, how do you kind of how do you grapple with that? Like what's been your experience with that journey, either within yourself or
Mm.
the women that you've supported?
Yeah. It's been a long journey for me. First of all, fuck the patriarchy. Let's just say that right
Fuck
now.
the patriarchy. Yes.
Because I do think a lot of the way, I mean, that's what I relate it back to is like we place this value on ourselves based off of what the feedback we get from other people and specifically men. At least that was the case for me when I was younger. Like
Yeah.
I was never the pretty one. I was never the smart one. I was always the athletic one. And
Uh-huh.
like I felt like I was in that box for sure. Like talk about people putting you in a box. I grew up in a very small conservative town
Mhm.
and like athletics was highly valued there. And so I felt like that was how I got my feedback, right? It was like being
Yep.
good at sports. And I was overweight like all through high school and all through my 20s. And like it was something that I struggled with. And it was no one ever said like, meet yourself where you are. Like
Mhm.
just be okay with where you are because you're beautiful inside and out. Like no one ever said that.
Hmm.
It was like, I love my mom for this and she knows she's guilty of this, but she was a yo-yo dieter. And I think that she was also like a product of that generation
Right.
where she was raising kids in the 80s and 90s. And that was just sort of like the onset of Weight Watchers and Jenny
Yep.
Craig and like who were the majority of the people who were taking part in those programs. It was women,
Mm-hmm.
and it was advertised towards women. So I really struggled with body image a lot. And when I got into the fitness industry and like looking back at pictures now, I'm like, God, it was so beautiful. Like
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see it. I had like this, I believe it's called body dysmorphia now, where like I wanted to be a certain weight and I would look in the mirror and I would still see that overweight person, but I was ripped. I was,
Mm. Oh, interesting.
yeah, like I was riding my bike to school every day. I was teaching, I think at one point in my career, I was teaching like 13 classes a week. And, like when people come to your classes, they're like, I want to look like you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, the only way you can look like me is if you're teaching this many classes. And
Right.
like, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up too, is like they look at these fitness professionals or they look at these supermodels or they look at whoever is out there in the media and they're like, that's what I want to look like. But, these people have a team of people helping them stay healthy. They have people they can pay to come to their home. Like and Fit Pros, like exercise is what they do for a living. And
Right.
so I think that people forget that.
Yeah.
So like what I want to do is to teach people to love themselves because honestly, like yoga did that for me. I mean, I think I was already sort of like on that path of self-acceptance, but I really think that I had to be sort of like knocked down a little bit. And my yoga teacher training did that. I mean, it broke me in ways that I was, and not to say that like don't do it, but I'm just saying like
Mhm.
emotionally it broke me a little bit. And I think I had to go through that to be like, you know, you are worthy and
Yeah.
you are beautiful inside and out. You're capable.
Mhm.
And it has taken me a very long time. And I think moms
Mm.
grapple with a lot of that self-image,
Mhm.
body image issues. And it was hard for me to feel like I had to bounce back,
Yeah.
actually, because I was at the time I was pregnant, I was still working in fitness. And I just felt
Mm.
like, I had to like look a certain way when I was
Yeah.
postpartum. And I feel for women who feel like they have to get back to a certain point. And I've just gotten to a point in my life where I'm like, I'm doing the best I can today, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time for people to get there unless you have people guiding you along the way.
Right.
So, what I want to teach women is to have the confidence in themselves, whether it's, reaching a certain goal or just starting something new. I feel like yoga and exercise and just sort of like all these active things that I've done in my life,
Mhm.
that's where I've gotten my confidence from.
Mhm.
And I want people to, and like, it doesn't have to be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, but like,
Mhm.
when you're not confident in one area of your life, it spills over into all those other areas.
It's
So,
so true.
yeah, I really just want to help women be more confident and comfortable in their skin and
Mhm.
meet them where they are in order to get there.
Yeah. I love that. And I love it's I'm just feeling so deeply what you're saying because there's so much like internalized shame around our bodies and so much desire to hide the parts that we deem like unattractive,
Right.
right? Like as you were talking, I was for some reason like the concept of a MILF like
Mm,
popped in my head, right? Like
right.
even as mothers, we want to be able to be like, there's still an objectification of
Right.
our bodies to the extent that we are given an acronym based on our looks that determines our ability to bring pleasure to men, right?
Right.
Like men saying that we're hot enough to fuck. Like, what is that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it makes me think even about my own body. Like, I carried twins. I have a very saggy stomach. Like, it's just not going to go away. It's like skin that has been stretched and it's just what's going to be there. And there's been like this ongoing relationship with that of like really celebrating my body for exactly what, I mean, she grew 2 humans, right? Like, it's freaking amazing.
Mhm.
Like 2 at the same time. Like, it just boggles my mind that we are able to create humans,
Yeah.
right? And instead of being celebrated for the magic that our bodies can create, we look at them and we're mad at them because they don't uphold a certain visual standard.
Yeah. I know. It's so infuriating because of like I felt like super, I don't know about you, but I felt like superwoman after I had my son. Like I was just like, men, I can't do shit. Like we run circles around them. Like I I know it's so infuriating and it sucks that we live in that kind of society. And I hope that the generations after us can change that narrative and
Yeah.
I mean, like I hope that we can be a part of the change and be on the right side of history, especially when it comes to women and like all the other things. But that aside, yeah, I don't feel like we're celebrated for what our bodies are capable of.
Yeah.
And I think it, I do still experience that like shame a little bit. I mean,
Totally.
like I said, when I was looking at pictures of myself a decade ago, I am like, wow, like I looked great, but like I look great now too. And like I
Yeah.
actually feel a lot happier
Yeah.
now than I did then. And yeah, my body is different, but that's okay. Like
Yeah.
I've produced a life. I am almost 40. I have run my knees into the ground. I tell my friends every year, my running days are almost over. I think I'm
Yeah.
just going to switch to cycling, but that never happens because I love running so much. But yeah, I mean, it just sucks that like there is this pressure that's put on us to look a certain way. And like
Yeah.
I did this exercise. It was in a group program I ran last year. And I had a holistic nutritionist come on who sort of like helps people in a holistic way just love themselves.
Mm.
And she does a lot of that through nutrition and
Yep.
mindfulness. And she had us all write a letter to our bodies.
Mm.
And then she said after that, like give yourself a day and then write a letter from your body back to you.
Oh, I love that.
It was her name is Lizzie. Do you know Lizzie Nelson? I don't know if you know her.
If I do, I don't think so.
She's a holistic nutritionist here in Denver. So shout out to you, Lizzie. But it was like this really beautiful practice and something I've never done before.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be like, I'm sorry for how I treated you. Like I thought that was what was going to bubble up inside of me, but it was more like, I am so grateful to you for allowing me to produce my son and still
Mm.
like recover well and exercise. And like it was more about gratitude. And that kind of surprised me because I was just going to be like, I'm sorry for all the bad things I did to you.
Right.
But that's what came up. And my philosophy when you write is to write unedited. And like
Yeah.
that was surprising, but also a really great practice. So I highly encourage anybody who's listening to do that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you're watching this and this speaks to you, like, do it and then share it with us, because
Hmm.
well, what
Yeah.
feels comfortable to share with
Yeah.
us, but what the experience was like for you. if you do it.
Yeah.
Before we, what was I had a question for you? But it slipped my brain.
That's okay. I'm sure it'll come to you at 2
Two,
a.m. tomorrow morning.
right? Oh, I remember what it was. It was just more like a reflection of that I love that that's what you're bringing to your membership and that that's what you're bringing to the humans that you serve is that, you know, yes, let's show up and connect with our bodies. Yes, let's get them moving. Maybe you get more fit from that. Maybe you do lose some weight from that. But at the end of the day, what the real message sounds like is you're going to just feel better in your body and you're going to be more connected to her in a way that feels like genuinely from a place of appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people look at themselves sometimes and they just like hate what they see. Cause I mean, I've been there. Like,
Yeah.
and I just want people to look at themselves and be kind and meet themselves with, like what you said, compassion and kindness, and give yourself grace, because women, they do a lot, and it's definitely a challenge to be kind to ourselves. I think we are innately very, very hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
and that can manifest in so many different ways. And I think if we meet ourselves with kindness and compassion, which I think is so accessible through mindful movement,
Mhm.
and being able to express that gratitude in those ways, is really powerful. So I'm with you. I feel like it's like we hold so much space for others, but we struggle to let others hold space for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by committing to seeing our bodies in this way, we are slowly picking away at that patriarchal structure that
Right.
we're all trying to fit into.
Right.
Like it's like that act of rebellion that's
Yeah. I
gonna
mean, absolutely. Like in whatever way we can resist that, like
yeah, yeah,
let's do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy has so generously offered a month of her membership to you if you're watching so that you can have the ability to start to connect with yourself in that way. So I'm going to include all of her information below so that you guys can have access to that. You can find her at Ayama with Amy on Instagram.
Mhm.
I'll be linking all of your information so anyone can find you as easily and effortlessly as possible. I just want to thank you for being here. I think this is such an important conversation around how women connect with their bodies. So anyone watching, if you have any questions for her or me, don't hesitate to reach out. And I just want to
Yeah.
thank you so much again for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor. And just want to like shout you out too, because you are a great space holder. So thank you for, asking me to come on and be with you. And I just think you have such a way with people that is really special and magical. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
having me.
I really appreciate that. I fully receive. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.